Book of Heaven, Volume 3, Part 10. June 17th, 1900. To be in God is to be in peace. Since this morning Blessed Jesus was not coming, I felt some shadows of disturbance arise in my interior about the reason why he was not coming. So when he came, he said to me, "My daughter, containing oneself in God and not going out of the boundaries of peace is all the same. So if you perceive a little bit of disturbance, it is a sign that you are making a little exit from inside of God, because containing oneself in Him and not having perfect peace is impossible. More so since the boundaries of peace are endless. Even more, all that belongs to God is all peace." Then he added, "Don't you know that the privations serve the soul as winter for the plants, as they form deeper roots, and winter fortifies them and makes them become green again and bloom in May?" After this he transported me outside of myself, and after I commended various needs to him, he disappeared from me, and I found myself inside myself, with a desire to remain always inside of God, so as to stay within the boundaries of peace. June 18th, 1900. All of creation points out to us the love of God. The wounded body of Jesus points out to us the love of neighbor. As he continued not to come, I tried to apply myself to considering the mystery of the scourging. While I was doing this, I just barely saw Blessed Jesus, all wounded and dripping blood, who told me, "My daughter, the heavens, along with all creation, point out to you the love of God. My wounded body points out to you the love of neighbor. So much so that, with my humanity united to my divinity, from two natures I formed one, and I rendered them inseparable, because I not only satisfied divine justice, but I operated the salvation of men. And so that all would assume this obligation to love God and neighbor, I not only made them one, but I reached the point of making of it a divine precept. So my wounds and my blood are many tongues that teach everyone the way to love one another, and the obligation that all have to care for the salvation of others." Afterwards, assuming a more afflicted appearance, he added, "What a ruthless tyrant love is for me, as I not only employed the whole course of my mortal life in continuous sacrifices, to the point of dying, bled dry on a cross, but I left myself as perennial victim in the sacrament of the Eucharist. And not only this, but I keep all of my favorite members as victims, living in continuous sufferings, employed for the salvation of men, just as among many I have chosen you, to keep you sacrificed for love of me and for men. Ah yes, my heart finds no respite nor rest if it does not find man. And man, how does he requite me? With most enormous ingratitudes." Having said this, he disappeared. June 20th, 1900. The most perfect humility produces in the soul the most intimate union with God This morning, as I was outside of myself and not finding my highest good, I had to go round and round in search of him. And when I tired myself to the point of feeling faint, I felt him behind my shoulders sustaining me. So I stretched out my hand and I pulled him to the front, saying to him, "My beloved, you know that I cannot be without you, and yet you make me wait so much, to the point of letting me faint. Tell me at least, what is the cause of this? Where have I offended you, that you subject me to torments so cruel, to martyrdom so painful, which is your privation?" And Jesus, interrupting my speaking, told me, my daughter, do not add more torment to my heart, embittered to the summit, as it finds itself in a continuous struggle because of the violences that everyone does to me continuously. The iniquities of men do violence to me, as they draw justice upon themselves, and force me to chastise them. And justice, clashing in a continuous struggle with the love I have for men, tortures my heart in such a painful way as to make me die continuously. You do violence to me, because when I come, knowing the chastisements that I am sending, you do not remain quiet. No, but you force me, you do violence to me, and do not want me to chastise. And I, knowing that you cannot do otherwise in my presence, so as not to expose my heart to a yet fiercer fight, abstain from coming. Therefore do not want to force me to come for now. Let me give vent to my fury, and do not want to increase my pains with your speaking. As for the rest, I do not want you to think about it, because the most perfect, the most sublime humility is that of losing every reason, and of not discoursing on why and how, but of undoing oneself in one's nothingness. And while the soul does this, without realizing it, she finds herself dissolved in God, and this produces in the soul the union most intimate, the love most perfect toward her highest good. This, however, to the greatest advantage of the soul, because in losing her own reason, she acquires divine reason, and in losing every discoursing about herself, that is, whether she is cold or warm, whether the things that happen to her are favorable or adverse, she will be interested in and will acquire a language fully celestial and divine. In addition to this, humility produces in the soul a garment of safety, in such a way that wrapped in this garment of safety, the soul remains in the most profound calm, embellishing all of herself, in order to please her dearest and beloved Jesus. Who can say how surprised I was left by this speaking of his? I had not a word to answer him. Then, after a little while, he disappeared, and I found myself inside myself, calm, yes, but afflicted to the summit. First, because of the afflictions and the struggles which my dear Jesus was in, and then for fear that he might not come. Who would be able to endure? How will I be able to bear myself because of his absence? How, Lord, give me the strength to bear this martyrdom so hard, so unbearable for my poor soul. After all, say whatever you want, but I will neglect no means. I will try all ways. I will use all stratagems to draw you to come. June 24th, 1900. The cross is the nourishment of humility. After going through a few days of privation, at the most a few shadows and flashes, I felt all of my powers asleep, in such a way that I myself could not understand what was happening in my interior. In this sleepiness, only one pain was awake in my interior, and it was this. It seemed it had happened to me as to one who, while sleeping, loses his sight or is deprived of all his riches. So the miserable one can neither grieve nor defend himself, nor use some means to free himself of his misfortunes. Poor one, in what a pitiful state he finds himself! But what is the cause of it? His sleep. Because if he had been awake, he would certainly have known how to defend himself well from his misfortunes. Such is my miserable state. It is not given to me even to let out a moan, a sigh, or to shed one tear, because I have lost sight of the one who is all my love, all my good, and who forms all my contentment. It seems that in order not to make me grieve from his privation, he made me fall asleep and left me. O Lord, wake me up yourself, that I may see my miseries, and know at least of what I am being deprived. Now, while I was in this state, from within my interior, I heard blessed Jesus, who was moaning continuously. Those moans wounded my hearing, and waking up a little bit, I said, "My soul and only good, from your moans I perceive the state too painful in which you find yourself. This happens because you want to suffer alone, and do not want to let me share in your pains. Even more so as not to have me in your company, you made me fall asleep, and you left me, without letting me understand anything more. I understand where all this comes from. It is so that you may be more free in chastising. But oh, please have compassion on me, for without you I am blind. And on yourself, for it is always good in all circumstances to have someone who would keep you company, who would relieve you, and somehow break your fury. In fact, now you are determined and you send scourges. But when you see your images perish from misery, you will let out more moans than now. And perhaps you will say to me, "Ah, if you had tried harder to placate me, if you had taken the pains of creatures upon yourself, I would not see my own members so tormented." Isn't it true, my most patient Jesus? Oh, please, relieve yourself a little bit and let me suffer in your place. While I was saying this, he moaned continuously, almost in act of wanting to be compassionated and relieved. But he wanted this relief to be snatched from him almost by force. So after my importunity, he stretched out his nailed hands and feet in my interior and shared a little bit of his pains with me. After this giving a little respite to his moans, he told me, "My daughter, it is these sad times that force me to this, because men have grown so bold and proud that everyone thinks he is the god of himself. And if I do not lay hand to the scourges, I would do harm to their souls, because the cross alone is the nourishment of humility. So if I did not do it, I myself would cause them to lack the means to be humiliated and to surrender from their strange madness, even though the majority of them offends me more. But I act like a father who breaks the bread for all to be nourished, a bread which some of his children do not want to take. Even more, they use it to throw it in their father's face. What has the poor father done wrong? So I am. Therefore compassionate me in my afflictions. Having said this, he disappeared, leaving me half awake and half asleep, I myself not knowing whether I have to wake up completely or go back to sleep. June 27th, 1900. The soul must recognize herself in Jesus, not in herself. I continue to be sleepy. This morning for a few minutes I found myself awake, and I comprehended my miserable state. I felt the bitterness of the privation of my highest and only good. I was able to just barely shed a few tears, saying to him, "My always good Jesus, how is it that you are not coming? This is not the way to behave, to wound a soul and then leave her. And what's more, so as not to let her know what you are doing, you leave her prey to sleep. Oh, please come. Do not make me wait so much." While I was saying this and yet more nonsense, in one instant he came and transported me outside of myself. And since I wanted to tell him of my poor state, imposing silence on me, Jesus told me, "My daughter, what I want from you is that you no longer recognize yourself in yourself, but that you recognize yourself only in me. So you will no longer remember yourself, nor will you ever again have recognition of yourself, but you will remember me. And unrecognizing yourself, you will acquire the recognition of me alone. And in so far as you will forget and destroy yourself, so will you advance in the knowledge of me, and will recognize yourself only in me. And when you have done all this, you will no longer think with your mind, but with mine. You will not look with your eyes. You will no longer speak with your mouth, nor will you palpitate with your heart, work with your hands, or walk with your feet, but will do everything with mine. In fact, in order to recognize herself only in God, the soul needs to go to her origin and to return to her beginning, God, from whom she came, and to conform all of herself to her Creator. And anything which she keeps of herself, and which is not conformed to her beginning, she must undo and reduce to nothing. Only in this way, naked, undone, can she return to her origin, recognize herself only in God, and operate according to the purpose for which she was created. Here, then, in order to conform to me completely, the soul must render herself indivisible with me. While he was saying this, I could see the terrible chastisement of plants withered, and how it must advance further. I could only say, "Lord, how will the poor people go on?" And he, so as not to listen to me, escaped me like a flash and disappeared. Who can say the bitterness of my soul in finding myself inside myself, as I was unable to speak to him even one word for myself, and for my neighbor, and because of my tendency to sleep, with which I was again left. June 28th, 1900. The present chastisements are nothing but a predisposition for future chastisements. This morning, as I was highly afflicted because of the privation of my loving Jesus, I saw him for just a little, and he said to me, "My daughter, how many masks will be unmasked in these times of chastisements? In fact, these present chastisements are nothing but the predisposition for all the chastisements which I manifested to you during the course of last year." While he was saying this, in my interior I said, "If the Lord continues to behave the way he is behaving, that since he wants to send chastisements, he does not come, he does not share his pains with me, and treats me with unusual manners, who will be able to endure? Who will give me the strength to remain in this state?" And Jesus, answering my thought, added in act of compassion, "And so, do you want me to suspend your state of victim for a little while, and to resume it later?" While he was saying this, I felt such confusion and bitterness. It seemed to me as if, with that proposal, the Lord was driving me away from himself, that I was unable to say either yes or no, also in order to hear what obedience decides. So without waiting for my word, he disappeared from me, leaving me as though with a nail stuck inside my heart, thinking that Jesus was rejecting me. The pain was so great that I did nothing but shed bitter tears. June 29th, 1900. Jesus and Luisa refresh each other. As I continued to be embittered, my adorable Jesus, having compassion for me, came and seemed to sustain me in his arms. Then, as he transported me outside of myself, I saw that a profound silence, a sadness, a mourning was reigning everywhere. The impression my soul received in seeing people that way was such that I felt a grip in my heart. Then, as though pulling me aside, blessed Jesus said to me, "My daughter, let us move what afflicts us away from us for a little while, and let us refresh each other." While saying this, he began to caress me and kiss me, but my confusion was such that I did not dare to requite him with kisses and caresses. And he added, "How come? I refresh you with kisses and with caresses, and you do not want to refresh me by requiting me with your kisses and your caresses?" So I felt the confidence to give him tit for tat, and while I was doing this, he disappeared from me. July 2nd, 1900. With her sufferings, Luisa holds back a chastisement. I continued to be embittered and afflicted, as though dazed. This morning he did not come at all. The confessor came and placed the intention of the crucifixion. At first, blessed Jesus did not concur, but then, after I prayed him to deign to let me obey, he just barely made himself seen and told me, "What do you want? Why do you want to do violence to me by force when it is necessary to chastise the peoples?" And I, "Lord, it is not me. It is the obedience that wants it so." And he, "Well then, since it is obedience, I want to share with you my crucifixion, and in the meantime I want to refresh myself a little bit." While saying this, he shared with me the pains of the cross, and while I was suffering, Jesus placed himself near me and seemed to refresh himself quite a bit. Now, while I was in this position, together with him, he showed me a cloud in the air, pitch black, approaching from one point, such that it struck terror and fright at the mere sight. And everyone was saying, "This time we die." While all were terrified, a refulgent cross rose from between me and Jesus, and advancing against that storm, put it to flight for the most part, so much so that the people seemed to calm down. I cannot tell for sure, but it seems to me that it was a hurricane, accompanied by bolts of lightning and by hail so violent as to have the power to sweep factories away. And the cross which dispelled it in great part seemed to be my little suffering, which Jesus had shared with me. May the Lord be blessed, and may everything be for his glory and honor. July 3rd, 1900. Chastisements with contagious and mortal diseases. This morning, having received communion, as soon as I saw my adorable Jesus, I said to him, "My beloved Lord, how is it that you are sending so many chastisements? Why do you not want to placate yourself for any reason? It seems that all means have failed, be it praying or saying, 'Lord, pour your bitternesses upon me.' Ah, it has not been your usual way to act like this." While I was saying this, interrupting my speaking, blessed Jesus answered, "Yet, my daughter, the chastisements I am sending are still nothing compared to those which have been prepared. Therefore do not want to afflict yourself with these, because they are not a matter of great affliction." As he was saying this, in front of me I saw many people affected by contagious diseases, who were dying. So taken by horror, I said to him, "Oh, Lord, that's all we need. What are you doing? What are you doing? If you want to do this, take me away from this earth, for my heart cannot bear the sights of scenes so gloomy. Besides, who can endure continuing in this state in which you put me, that you do not come, or you come like a shadow? And not only this, but you leave me dazed, sleepy, not letting me understand anything anymore. Yet you told me that you would keep me like this until you would somehow give vent to your fury. But now you want to add fury to fury, and it seems you will not be done for now. Poor me, poor me! Who will give me the strength to remain in this state? Who will be able to endure?" While I poured out my affliction, compassionating me, Jesus said to me, "My daughter, do not be concerned by your state of sleepiness. This says that just as I am with people, as if I were sleeping, as if I did not hear them and look at them, in that same state have I placed you. After all, if you mind it, I told you another time, do you want me to suspend your state of victim? And I, Lord Obedience, does not want me to accept this suspension." And he, "Well then, what do you want from me? Remain calm and obey." Who can say how afflicted I was left? Not only this, but it seems that my interior powers remained so asleep that I live as if I were not living. O Lord, have pity on me. Do not leave me in abandonment in such a pitiful and sorrowful state. You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 3, Part 10. Fiat.